We need to build a bigger and better commercial engine so that we create a business large enough to pay the players more. And it's not just BayFC, it's every women's team in the league. You really, really need the philosophy of the rising tides lifts all ships, and you need the whole league to improve. I think if you have a couple winners, like if you have Angel City and Bay and San Diego win, ultimately the sport won't thrive. So Sixth Street is the majority owner. We are founded actually by 4 former players. They had this idea that we need a professional women's team in the Bay Area. It got to Sixth Street and they said, hey, we want to take it and lead it at a bigger scale. This is the first time the NWSL had taken private equity in as an ownership group. So there was a lot of what does that mean? And how will we ensure that this is a great owner for the franchise? And so Sixth Street actually committed $120 million, which is the largest ever institutional investment in women's sports.
Brady, this is such a joy to make happen. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me here. It's exciting.
Tell us a little bit, BayFC, brand new NWSL franchise, the newest one, your debut season, and how that has been for you coming into that position, starting this brand new team.
It's tough to even put words to it because it's been so awesome. We had 9 months to build an organization, build a business, start our commercial engine going, and field a team. So yeah, it was crazy. I was the first full-time employee last June. We needed to be on the pitch by the beginning of March. We didn't have, I was just saying earlier, we didn't have an ERP, we didn't have an email system, we didn't have any players, we didn't have a coach. We had to build it all from scratch.
Month one, what do you do? Who's the first hire, and how do you just stabilize the base then, coming in as employee number one?
Well, so I think first hire was our COO, Jen Millay. She came from the Warriors, and so we got someone first class with really like world-class sports franchise experience in day one. I think the other magic tool that we had in our kit that enabled us to move so fast was we are owned by Sixth Street, and they're a $70 billion private equity firm with huge sports experience. And so they had Rick Welts, former president of the Golden State Warriors, Stacey Slaughter, one of the architects of the San Francisco Giants. We had Becca Van Dyke, the former CMO of Facebook and Apple, on our board. So we had this incredible expertise. And then we had all of their understanding of, what it takes to be a world-class sports franchise and how to move fast. So we had a lot of advantages that other teams don't.
What's the time frame between buying that franchise and then actually having to have a team on the pitch?
So the franchise was awarded in April, and we had to have a team on the pitch by March. I started in June, so it was wild.
How much did you buy it for?
$50 million.
Which now I think is already kind of, expansion franchises have increased continually.
The next team is coming, so they haven't quite awarded it, but the rumor is it's going to be exponentially more than what we paid for it.
And that was Sixth Street driving that capital injection exclusively, or was it a consortium? So
Sixth Street is the majority owner. There were some investors in the business who came in to support. We are founded actually by 4 former players. They're legends of U.S. women's national team: Brady Stewart, Allie Wagner, Danielle Slayton, and Leslie Osborne. And so they had this idea that we need a professional women's team in the Bay Area. They had investors in the Series A. It got to Sixth Street and they said, hey, this is a big idea. We want to take it and lead it at a bigger scale. And so Sixth Street put in the majority of the capital.
And then do they have to, right at the beginning, make sure that they have the capital there to be able to then actually build and run the business? Because it's one thing buying the franchise, it's another thing funding the project.
Well, 100%, because this is the first time the NWSL had taken private equity in as an ownership group. So there was a lot of what does that mean? And how will we ensure that this is a great owner for the franchise? And so Sixth Street actually committed $120 million, which is the largest ever institutional investment in women's sports.
Okay, so they do 50 on the franchise and then 70 over like a staggered payment plan, like in terms of projections over the next 3 years?
Yeah.
Got you.
Yeah.
Wow. How much does it take to run a team for a year?
It's expensive, particularly when you're trying to do it the way we are, which is the goal is to be a global sports franchise. We want to be, not a great women's team, but a true global sports franchise, eventually like Barcelona, like the Yankees, like Chelsea. So that's the goal. And to do that, you need to show up in a really leading way day one. I think our branding looks like it. Our in-stadium experience reflects that. Our marketing reflects that. The way that we show up with our fans and in our community reflects that. And so it's expensive.
Branding's integral. When does the branding actually become a part of it? How long did that take to establish?
The branding was about a month-long exercise that happened between, call it, middle of April to June.
Okay.
Before the team launched. So it is pretty thoughtful, though. It is intended to reflect the Bay Area. So if you can see the poppy color, which is the orangey color, is the color of the Golden Gate Bridge, actually. That's the paint tone that's used on the Golden Gate Bridge. The blue you see is the Bay for the San Francisco Bay. And then the gray is intended to be the fog that rolls through the Bay Area.
Of the costings, how much is player salaries as a percent?
Well, the NWSL is a salary cap league. It's 2.5, moving up, though, in next year, and so going up.
We had Alexis Ohanian on the show, and he spoke about it, and I was shocked at how low it was.
Yeah, look, I will say our league, I think, is the best women's league in the world, or certainly among them. And as everyone knows, football, most popular sport in the world. And so these are the best athletes in the most popular sport in the world. They happen to be women. And so their starting salary in this league is $37,000.
A year? Mm-hmm. A year?
Mm-hmm. We can do things like we can help with housing. We do everything we can within the league rules to improve the players' lives. But one of my personal goals and why I'm passionate about this job and what we're doing is we need to build a bigger and better commercial engine so that we create a business large enough to pay the players more, right? And it's not just BayFC, it's every women's team in the league needs to be bigger and better and stronger so that we kick off more money to pay the players.
But that's not the problem, is it? The problem is actually the cap itself. Because you could pay them more now, thanks to 6th Street and budgets expanding, and you just take the hit for the short term and expect it to kind of pay back over time.
We could individually, right? But that wouldn't systematically change the league. And if you look in the US, most leagues are salary cap leagues. It's not unusual. It's just that the businesses are so much bigger and better that it's not this stupid constraint where some people aren't making enough money.
How do you balance it? Because obviously you've got franchises in there that make more and franchises that are making less. Is there the need where they should be spending more on salaries? And is it at the moment protecting, should we say, some of the smaller franchises to allow them to establish themselves sensibly?
I think it's an interesting question. I think what it is that there's different kind of motivations within the league, right? You have some teams that are thinking about how do we drive a profitable business right now, which is really in every other business I've ever been a part of, the key question, right? So that's an admirable way of looking at it. You have other teams that are saying, how big is big, right? Angel City, how much can we push the boundary here and grow the business? That's where we are. I think so. It's just more that you have different motivations within the league, and you really, really need the philosophy of the rising tides lifts all ships, and you need the whole league to improve. I think if you have a couple winners, if you have Angel City and Bay and San Diego win, ultimately the sport won't thrive.
You're bringing a new brand to market in an incredibly exciting, developing, current and relevant league. What was that like from a commercial perspective? Was it a real influx of interest?
Yes. Look, the Bay Area as a business community is one of the most powerful in the world. So I felt lucky going in. I knew we were going to be able to talk to a lot of people. I will say we walked into plenty of meetings where people were already wearing BayFC gear and they were really excited about it. The conundrum we have, though, as a startup team in a smaller league is that a lot of the companies in the Bay are really big. And so they would say, we don't really know where to fit you. We normally invest in Formula One, right? How do we think about an individual team in the context of we're usually investing in large scale global leagues? So what we've done is storytell around why Bay is important, what it means, not just with our own ambitions and how they're kind of getting in at a great valuation, but also what it might mean for their employee bases locally.
How much was the shirt sponsorship?
It is the largest ever in women's sports, our kit sponsor.
Who is it, sorry?
It's Sutter Health. They are a local healthcare provider in the Bay. They have been an amazing partner for us. It's actually crazy. The early sponsors that came in with us, like Sutter and Visa and PNC Bank, they came in before we were a team. So their belief in the concept was massive. And look, I hope that there's a new team coming in Boston. I want them to be the biggest, right? That's the point about the rising tide, raising all the boats. We want everyone to keep beating each other. And I think Angel City is going to go out again with their kit sponsor soon. I want them to beat us too. I want everybody to keep raising the bar.
Have you been impressed by the power of the NWSL?
Yes, I have been. I think we have our Commissioner Berman is awesome. She is very forward thinking and helping to push the game and really has a vision for where to take the game in the US. And so I think it's great.
I love the business side, obviously. When we break down like the net inflows, what are the three core components? Is it like tickets, media sponsorships, and like rights?
It is, for us, it's tickets, sponsorships, and merch.
Merch, okay. How much is tickets percent-wise?
Let me do the mix. The mix is like 40 sponsorships, 40 tickets, 20 merch.
Wow. Okay. And in tickets, do you include like the experience of the drinks and the hospitality and everything?
No. So we don't own our venue. We play in an MLS team venue. We get a % of the food and beverage, but it's not significant for us. Hopefully, though, we want to build our own stadium, and then it will be.
Is that part
that and parking? You can't be a global sports franchise and not have your own home. Stadiums are so expensive. We need to work through the whole financial model of what a stadium looks like for us. Yeah. But it's been wonderful. The Quakes have been really good partners to us, so we're happy with that. We did just announce, though, that we're building our own training facility, which is going to be on Treasure Island, which is an island in the middle of San Francisco Bay. So
I love American names.
It's brilliant.
In England, it'd be called like, the Causeway. In the US, it's like Treasure Island, like Pirate Bay. Oh, Christ, that sounds so good.
We got sent your teaser video for it beforehand, and it is amazing. Firstly, I'd love to post a couple of those links below this so people can actually see it. Because it is amazing. These like 30-second to 1-minute clips talking and showing the development of this.
Yeah, but that's why English football's like so far behind just in the storytelling, as we always go back to this, which is like, I think that's so important, and we don't have that.
It's a perfect question, because NWSL is product and what you're trying to build now as well as brand. How much of that is about telling a great story for not just you and the area, but the sport in general and what it means to the community?
Huge. It's one of the most important mandates that we have as a team and as a league, and like that we need to do, right? I don't even know how to begin to underscore how important this is. So a lot of what we need right now as a league and as a sport, and frankly for women's sports broadly, is viewers, right? You need people to watch the sport. You need people to follow the players, follow the stories. It's all about the stories. And I don't think that people feel the stories of the female athletes as much. Like, they might appreciate the athleticism, appreciate the game, but they don't know the backstory of every player on the field, and they don't understand like why it's so exciting that so-and-so is playing today versus someone else, or if someone scores a goal, why that's significant versus someone else. There just isn't the personalization and veneration of the athletes and the team stories yet. And so that's a lot of what we're trying to do is, number one, elevate our athletes, tell their stories, make the Bay Area familiar with them, make the Bay Area fall in love with them, and elevate that on a global scale, on a national scale, keep going with that.
Players are obviously a massive component of, any sports team. When you're starting a team from scratch, how do you recruit? How do you bring a squad together from nothing to fully functional in 9 months?
So there was an expansion draft, so we were able to draft some players. And then there was a college draft. With the recent CBA, we have done away with both of those, which is actually a huge advancement for the league, just moving to free agency and kind of bringing the league in line with the sport globally. But it was interesting building a team, because also as an expansion team, and a lot of players don't want to take that on. That's harder, right? It's all new infrastructure, all new philosophy, all new staff. And that's a big lift to be, you're basically part of a founder of a startup as a player then. And then we had some players who said, no, thanks, I don't want to be a part of an expansion team. But then we had a lot of other players who felt differently. Like we have Jen Beattie, she came from Arsenal. And one of the things that she loved was getting to be part of the team who builds the culture from the start, right? You're part of those legends who are the first names on the door, who really establish the traditions. And so we had players who were very excited about that. We also had some great international scouts who know the international game, and we pulled people from across the globe onto the team.
What was the hardest thing in that 9 months period in spinning up the team that you didn't anticipate?
For me, it was, this is really dorky and not necessarily sports related, but the business infrastructure. You need to build an ERP. You need to get office space. You need to you have never done any of this stuff before. So you're trying to run water through the pipes while you're building the pipes at the same time. And so it's just a lot of like deep infrastructure stuff that's a really heavy lift and very like specific and technical, and you need specific expertise. But you're also trying to build branding and marketing, and you're trying to get people excited about a team while with just no infrastructure around. I think another thing that was challenging, but this was kind of a fun challenge, was how do you market a team and get people excited about a team when you have no players, right? So if you look at a lot of our early marketing, it's just people in the community playing soccer or wearing our kit and being excited about it, because you can't tell any player stories because we didn't even have players till starting in December.
Who's your ICP? When you think about like the initial customer profile, or
I was like, what's an ICP?
Ideal customer profile who you sell to, 25 to 35-year-old women, 30 to 50-year-old men. What is the ICP that when you do branding, you do marketing, you think of resonating, that's the person we're trying to reach?
I love that question, because I think a lot of people looking outside in, they make, I think, a really simplifying assumption that's inaccurate of like, I want the dad who's going to bring his daughter, right? Like, and that's great. I want the dad who's going to bring his daughter. That's awesome. Don't get me wrong. We want people who love the sport of football. We want soccer fans. We want people who love the beautiful game and want to come experience the beautiful game at its finest. And so it's more of a psychographic than a demographic cut. And so I think you actually see that in our fans in the building. If you come to one of our games, there's tons of families, but there's also like groups of men coming together. There's groups of women. There's multi-generational people coming. There's sports teams coming to experience it. So it is really much more people who just love the sport and love the game. And then it builds on itself, and it's a pretty tremendous fan experience. So then people tell their friends and more people start coming. We've actually had journalists reach out to us proactively saying, hey, either they've personally been to a BayFC game or they've heard about it, and they say, we hear there's something just different and special going on in the building, and it's such a special experience, and the fans are different. What's going on over there? And so that's a question we get asked all the time. And I think what it is just that people love it, and they're doing it for the love of the team and the sport, and so they're just proud to be there. It's really neat.
Everyone says that I speak to you, the biggest problem is like actually attendance rates not being high enough consistently. Is that fair or is that not fair?
I mean, we're in our first season, so we're getting that. That's something as a CEO I worry about, thinking about.
How big's the stadium?
It's 18,000.
Okay.
And we're average attendance about 15,000 right now. So
which is good.
It's
pretty
good.
Great.
Yeah, we're doing well. The stadium actually feels full at 13,000, so it feels full every time we play.
How's the product different in your mind to men's football?
I think in the U.S. is interesting. In the U.S., football is almost a women's first game just because of the success of the U.S. women's national team. I think my understanding, and I'm not an expert on men's football, is that the women's game in the U.S. at least is being played at a little bit of a higher level. Now, I do know from talking with global scouts that the women's game in the U.S. does have some of the men's game, which is big, strong, fast players playing run and gun, like versus like the highly, highly technical sport that you see in Barcelona, for instance. Our vision is to build more of Barcelona-style football. So we want it to be much more technical, much more tactical, much more of a possession game. And so that's what we're trying to build in the Bay. And I think women's soccer, though, broadly in the U.S. is a little more physical than you might see on the global scale.
Women's football over here gets a lot of attention, particularly now because of its structures. And quite often here, more often than not, women's teams are extensions or alongside the men's teams, just as Chelsea women or Arsenal women. And something we talk about a lot is it ever possible to really build the global independent brand for a women's team while you are part of this massive Premier League product? Why is it so important that you, as Bay, as Gotham, as Angel City, etc., are independent brands?
It is a great question. We think about it too because look, in the US, the WNBA obviously is an extension of the NBA and is killing it right now, which is wonderful. Love to see that. I think the more people who watch any women's sport, it's great. The answer I would give, though, I think if it's done right, maybe there's no one answer. So maybe you can have Chelsea women's being just as great as BayFC and Angel City. Sure. And I think obviously you have such an incredible benefit of the legacy of the existing football brands, right? The English Premier League is the league of football, right? So great to be the women's side in there. I would go back to my experience in business broadly outside of sport, which is that whenever you have the smaller, less successful business within a bigger business, it just never gets the resources and attention that the bigger one gets. So even in the NWSL, when you look at teams, the teams that are associated with the men's side just don't ever do as well. You're never getting the same.
You need to be the priority.
Yeah, you need to be the priority. And even if you pretend it's the priority, it's not. It's just always in a capital allocation decision. It's always going to go to the bigger, more important business.
To what extent is player brands partly your responsibility versus players' responsibility? I think some of the best teams now view it as like themselves as content production houses, and they enable their players to create great content. And then others are like, no, it needs to be the individual personalities and players, which it is too. But how do you think about that?
I think our goal, just knowing that how our players are compensated by the league, we want them to have every chance they can have to be successful. So we fully support helping them on the content side. I mean, I think, look, if they are repping Bay, it needs to be under our header, right? That needs to be what we're doing. If you're wearing your Bay kit and you're talking about Bay, that's with us. But if you also want to get a separate endorsement, or if within the rules of the CBA, we can support you getting endorsements, we want to, right? We want to help them. Obviously, within league rules, we need to make sure we're very, very on the right side of those. But to the extent that our players can get other money, we want them to. Think of the NFL or the NBA. The league itself is spitting off so much money to the teams. Right? We aren't at that point as a league yet. So this new media rights deal was a great breakthrough. And I think most importantly is getting the game into more homes, because that's what we need is more viewership. But we need bigger media deal. We need the league to start getting more league sponsorships, league media deals, because that then should go to the teams and alleviate this pressure that everyone's feeling. Can
you just tell the audience what that deal was? Because it was really important.
It was a huge new media rights deal. I think it was 41 times the previous media rights deal. Yeah.
It was about 240 million.
Yeah. And it was 41 times the previous. So the previous base was very small. It puts what the really brilliant part about it is that it puts us across multiple platforms. So wherever you decide to watch as a consumer, you can get. So some of the games are streaming on Amazon. Great if you prefer streaming. Some of the games are on CBS. Some of the games are on ION, which is a smaller network, but you can get on all the streaming platforms. So depending on how you choose to watch, you can get the game. And the deal that we need is we need viewership. We need the game because we're having great attendance at our games, actually. And across the league, we're having pretty good attendance, and it's growing by 40% a year right now. So good attendance, sponsorship is growing. Now we need that component of people watching us home as well.
We talk about it all the time on here, and it's something that I'm not sure we kind of try and come up, but the attention economy right now is more competitive than it's ever been. We're fighting for fans, sports are fighting for eyeballs, they're fighting for the younger audience as well.
So it's interesting. The thing that actually concerns me is the trend of young kids not wanting to sit and watch a full game. They want to consume the highlights on YouTube. That is it's like a paradigm shift of live sport consumption. Everybody still loves to go to games, but that's more, unless you're a season ticket member, that's more episodic. It's that tradition of a father and a son or a father and a daughter sitting on the couch and on a Sunday afternoon watching the full game is I talk to a lot of parents and like they're watching by themselves while their kid knows everything that happens in the game, but it's because they watched it on YouTube that evening.
Or TikTok.
Yes.
Yeah. I watch a lot of football on TikTok.
Yeah.
Well, it's the biggest market, isn't it, on TikTok?
Yeah,
Is it?
it is. And
highlights.
It's actually pretty incredible. Yeah.
So that to me is the most interesting like competition. How do you make sure you're creating the right content for that?
So you and the league have identified that. What are you doing? What's the collective move to try and ensure that doesn't happen?
Well, I think if you think of sports, which I do, as basically experience and content curation, you basically need to gear up at a league and a team level as content creation studios and make sure that you're packaging and sharing out this to young people in a way that they want to consume it.
That's interesting. So it's not fight against it, it's packaged in a way that they want to consume it.
100%. Like if you fight against it, you might lose them because, EPL, MLB, NBA, like all those exist. And so if those leagues get their hooks in the kids and they enjoy consuming it, then they just kind of forget about yours.
Do you have a content team at Bay?
Yes, we do. Absolutely.
How big is it?
It is 4 people.
Is that big enough?
No.
Yeah.
It's not. We do work with some freelancers, but we're looking at, we're just ending our first season. How do we continue to evolve the team? And a big place is content.
Yeah. I totally see that.
Well, it's interesting. It's something our players have kind of commented on to us because for the NWSL, I think we have a decent amount. Angel City has more, and they do a great job with it. But our players are like, wow, you have a photographer at every practice. You have traveling with us, and so I don't know that it's the norm yet.
I've always admired.
But that's where I think teams can be so helpful to the individual players, which is like the packaging of individual content plans, which is like actually. Like bluntly, I'd have 12, and I'd actually be packaging. And says the guy who's not running the budget. But bluntly, and I'd be sending each day a pack of content, short form clips, pics, highlight reels to each player from each session, and so they can actually post a day in the life, my training session with music, with shots, with headers each day, like enable them to build their brand.
That's very cool. I mean, we do it at the team level, right? And we try to make it really fun, but it's not for all 24 of you. Here's and you figure out what you want to do with it.
Yeah, and it doesn't even daily is a tough one to do at the start for sure. Like I know we say on content like don't bite off more than you can chew. Do like a weekly digest for each of them, but like individually, that is like oh wow, I'm gonna really promote the shit out of this.
But also, I'm really gonna have a way to communicate with my fans. It's not even for the promotion. I'm like for the connection.
Sure.
So I love what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like on that side, on the competition piece and where you kind of really have to stand out, we talk a lot. MLS is really difficult, right? It competes against the Premier League, it competes against some of the biggest teams in Europe. From the establishment of women's football and the presence that it has within the US sporting economy, how much competition do you face from international women's football when actually trying to secure your fan base of the domestic league?
I don't think we face enough, to tell you the truth. I look forward to the day when there are more bigger global women's football franchises, and I hope that we're one of them. Although, like, we actually did a friendly this year versus Barcelona. So we brought Barcelona over to the Bay, played them in PayPal Park, and that was a really incredible night. But I will say for our fans, they were just excited to see Bay as they were Barcelona. It was more for us an assertion of like, look, this is the caliber of team that we want to be in the league of. This is who we are. Come and celebrate that we attract this, and we're in this conversation.
A lot of fandom across sport now is driven by individuals, right? So
yes.
It's people will now support Al Nassr because Cristiano Ronaldo plays for Al Nassr, and they'll follow him around wherever he goes. And
look at Caitlin Clark.
Look at Caitlin Clark. Well,
that's
exactly right. Fandom is very much individual driven. What do you need to do in the NWSL in particular to attract the biggest stars? Because I genuinely think that league has the opportunity to be the biggest women's football league in the world.
It's a big, and that's the goal. The goal of the NWSL is to be the biggest women's football league and the best in the world. And a lot of it is recognizing that this is a global sport. We need to attract global talent. I think the salary cap is one thing I know kind of spooks international players for sure. I think there are concerns about the style of football that's played in the U.S., the more physical, run and gun. Like a lot of the best talent loves the technical. I think, and my understanding is this isn't as much so, but if you are a female footballer and you have the chance to play in Europe and play in the Champions League, that's incredibly appealing because you grew up watching Champions League. Although my understanding is like they can get over that one. So I think we just need to be more competitive. I know on our team, we have Jen Beattie from Arsenal. We brought Dana Castellanos over from Man City. We brought Asisat Oswala from Barcelona, and we brought Rachel Kundananji from Madrid. So we pulled a pretty international crew, and our goal is to, in the offseason, bring in more international talent to the team.
If you could sign one player right now, who would it be?
I think what's interesting in the U.S., so much of what brings the fans in is the U.S. women's national team. And actually, we had someone on our team named to the U.S. women's national team today. So that's really big for Bay. Alyssa Melanson. Congratulations, Alyssa. So, for the U.S. right now, it's U.S. women's national team players. Like, one of our biggest games was Alex Morgan. When San Diego came, she's not Alex Morgan of 8 years ago, but she's such a name and such a fan favorite. It's the national team that really brings people in.
Yeah.
My question to you is like, the MLS, I think actually is just like really quite poor. And I see all of my friends have English Premier League teams and none of them have MLS teams. Do you see the same? And do you share my, like, I'm a finance person, like short MLS, long EPL?
Oh, I hate to say it. Yes, right. The MLS is growing. I think they're doing a great job, but they're just not there yet. What I think is interesting in the MLS is you're starting to see more in the kind of development of talent. So you have more American talent finally going to Europe, which is the benchmark for what real talent is in the sport right now. So hopefully, as you have that feeder system getting stronger and stronger, maybe then the teams themselves become stronger over time. But it's interesting. I've talked with some leaders in MLS teams, and I've said, like, what would it look like if your team like played an EPL team? And they're like, well, we would be destroyed, but we could play in the Champions League, right? Like they could play a tier down.
Oh, the championship.
Champions. Sorry, yes.
Do you think it sustains like the Messi mania? I think that's the big question that we always ask. It's profile built on individual is dangerous because it relies.
I think it scares a lot of people. Yeah, for sure.
How do you think you develop a system, because you now have an opportunity where the league doesn't necessarily need to build itself on individuals?
I think you need to have stronger teams then, right? You need to have ownership groups that are really aggressive about being world class. You need to have people willing to invest. You need to have people investing behind great facilities. Right now, if you go to your average NWSL game, it doesn't always feel as elevated as it could. So I think you need to say, basically, as a league, we're going to raise the bar on the in-game experience and the fan experience.
Do you bring a lot around the games? Because like encouraging more fan spend in your stadium, like in your environment, is something a lot of like teams in the US have done really well. It's something they struggle with a little bit more over here, is getting that fan spend to happen within the walls of the team.
So for us, it's not about encouraging the spend. It's about making the in-game experience so wonderful and delightful that you want to come back, right? So it's about like, what's the music? What are the traditions we're built? It's a little bit anathema to the English football fan, right? Like I've talked to people at English football and they're like, no, we want to go in, sit in an uncomfortable seat, eat a sausage, have a beer, and like, yes, and we're out. Like our goal is, no, you come, we've got this awesome fan fest where you can play games, there's great food here. We have really fun music playing. We like to play music before corner kicks, which is very...
What?
Yeah.
Imagine trying to implement that here.
So we like to...
Is that not off-putting?
Well, we trained our players on it beforehand, so they knew what to expect.
This is like Tiger Woods in the early days, when his father would like throw insults at him as he was putting.
You could now commercialize that. You could commercialize a corner.
You could sell it.
It's like, in the IPL.
Or you could do an advert.
We do brand our corner kicks.
Do you?
Yeah.
No.
You
brand your corner kicks?
That is amazing.
Sure.
That is amazing. So like I could have a podcast read before the corner?
No, it would be like more like on the scoreboard. It would be like,
It's the
DoorDash
corner.
Yeah, the DoorDash corner.
Yeah. It's like, do you remember?
How much does that cost? I would buy that.
Well, we can talk after this.
That would be unbelievable. In the Bay, actually, for 20 VC.
It's the 20 VC corner.
That would be so fun.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
They did it in the IPL in the Indian. They made like the Yes Bank Maximum. Do you remember where anytime someone hit a set, a big like a home run type thing, it would just be like it's just branded, and it was amazing.
we have like one of our sponsors who, whenever a goal scored, donates, and we put it on the board. Like, yeah, we're monetizing it.
That is amazing.
But it's much more about like creating a great fan
Yeah.
experience. So there's the in-game experience, which we do try to push the boundaries. Like we do try to break the traditions.
I think it's great. You should do, yeah.
It's fun, and we want it to be a super fun experience for the players. But then we're a business, so we're going to monetize everything we do.
I totally agree with you. So you should. Can I ask, where you finish in the league, does that determine a payout from the league?
No.
Is this all the same?
Yeah.
And your split of media rights is the same?
Yeah.
Wow.
Is that right? Because that's different to English football.
It comes back to the whole beautiful, like you're in the most capitalist, like open market, yet you have some of the most socialist sports systems.
They're communists. They're communists. They don't have relegation. They have pay caps.
Everyone's equal.
I think for the league at the place it is right now, it's appropriate. It's still in its infancy. I think you really need every team to have a chance to be very successful.
Yeah, I think the thing that does come up as well when we've spoken to other franchises, and it's like we've got to remove the dead games, like the games that mean less, because if teams aren't competitive and they they get trounced, or if you have middle of the table games where then no one's going to make playoffs, no one gets relegated, it doesn't matter, you just lose the attention. Well,
and that's one of the most fun things about the NWSL is it's a pretty evenly matched league, right? Right now you have Orlando that's killing it on every dimension, but otherwise, on any given game, any team can win. So we're coming into the playoffs, and obviously we're in the 8th slot, which is the final slot to make the playoffs, which is so exciting. But our position obviously is influenced by the behavior of any other team, and we can't even predict the outcomes right now because the teams are pretty evenly matched across the board. It's fun.
Who do you learn from?
So I'm new to sports, and it's been one of the coolest things about joining this industry is how open, like obviously you're a fierce competitor on the field, but how open other teams are to sharing. Like we've had Angel City, reached out and was like, what can we do to help you? Here were our learnings when we were starting up. Avoid the mistakes we made. And I would call them up and be like, how many people do you have in finance? Do you have your own in-house lawyer? Like, questions like that, they've completely opened their doors to us. We're doing the same for Boston now. Everybody, or even I was up in Seattle a few weeks ago and wanted to visit their training facility because we're building ours, and their whole team was so excited to meet and talk. There's just so much sharing across the teams.
What was the biggest mistake that you made that, with the benefit of hindsight, you wish you hadn't made?
I don't know that we know that yet. Well, I'll tell you soon. I think one of the things we've been talking about as a leadership team, our philosophy this year has been, we say yes to absolutely everything. And it's been great. We've had a very successful season, but it's starting to get very taxing on the org as a whole. So we're starting to say, okay, the mantra for next year is more like, we need to be really clean on what the priorities are, and it needs to be more of a brick in, brick out, like a tech roadmap kind of a philosophy of this is the org bandwidth, and like we're going to execute all this with excellence, and if something comes in, something has to come out. Because I think we kind of came close to breaking the org with everything we did.
One, why did you want the job?
It was I really wanted it. It was my dream job. Legacy.
Did you do like a victory dance when you got it?
Well, it was weird. Very weirdly, on the day I got offered this job, I also got offered a CEO role in apparel. And I come from apparel. That's my background. So it was direct to consumer, high growth, menswear focused apparel company. I was probably adding value to that company like in the interview process. It's funny. So I was talking with the CEO of Levi's, where I worked for many years, and weirdly, both companies had backdoor referenced me with him, and they both told me when they made me the offer. So I called him to be like, hey, thanks for saying nice things about me. And he said, look, I know you're not asking, but you have to take the soccer job. You have to. And I was like, oh my gosh, I thought you were going to tell me I had to do the apparel. And he said, there's always going to be another apparel company to run, but nobody gets the chance to start a sports team.
Sensitive one, but I'm interested. How important is it that you have top female executives running top female sports teams?
I'm sure part of a reason I was chosen is because I'm a woman. I think having women in leadership roles in any company is important. I think having the best people is really important. So I would rather have the best people than have exclusively women.
What percent of CEOs in the NWSL is women?
Off the top of my head, a lot of them.
Also, understandings that you have from a career outside of it, I'd imagine, coming in. When you're looking at the commercialization, you're looking at the brands that can come in now and contribute. Actually, an experience outside of sports for you was probably a huge value add to them to be able to bring that.
I think for me, yes, I have built and scaled businesses and, all that were very, very brand driven. So I think that's why I was brought on. It's from an experience, consumer engagement.
Which other team has the best brand?
Oh, Angel City.
Okay.
For sure. Angel City and Bay and some other teams in the league, we have our aspiration is to build these businesses, right? We want to play in this global field. I think there are some teams who are really focused on having a great team for their local community, which is awesome. That's not a knock. They just have a different focus. Or even I've heard people talking about Michelle Kang, right? She's a pretty great in the sport. And what she would say is, from a Washington Spirit perspective, she really focused out of the gates on the sporting side. She wanted to sort of do what you were talking about, like build an excellent on-field product, which she has, by the way. It's excellent. She has like Trinity Rodman. She has a good team.
Does she have corners that are sponsored by people?
Not yet. But she's saying now she's turning her focus to the business side. So I think for her, it was what's my cadence? Like we were like, let's do both at once. Maybe stupid. She was like, I want to build out the sporting side, and now I'm pivoting onto the business. And she just brought in a woman, Kim Stone, to lead the team. She comes from the Warriors. She's excellent, and I know that they're going to be super competitive very soon.
I'm interested as an investment. You get Sixth Street involved in it. For them, surely they want to be spending money. They want. Is that not a turnoff for some of these investors where they come in and they actually can't finance the thing in the team that generally does build a lot of success?
I mean, I think Sixth Street, what makes them really great at sports investing is they are invested in so many different leagues and so many teams kind of globally. And so what they would say is, we know how leagues tend to evolve and sort of understood that this is the state of where the league is now, but we're confident as the league moves to be more robust commercially and moves to a larger revenue share model with the players that will organically raise the salary cap. And so I think they would say, like, our understanding of the progression of the league is that if it is commercially successful, the rest of the flywheel will move.
How involved are they in setting strategy, vision, decision making?
They are fantastic partners. We are really, really lucky to get to work with Sixth Street. I would say we have an absolute shared vision for the team. And when we are partnering and discussing like what resources we need, they get it, right? They want us to be successful. They know that sports is expensive and they know, the investment required. So they come along with us.
Does it need a lot more investment, do you see, in the future, the league?
The league?
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, just look, like we're building our training facility right now. We're only the second team in the league to have their own training facility built like that. So every team needs to have that, in my opinion. The players need a home. They need great facilities in order to be great athletes. So that's just a tip of the iceberg. Like when we're building our training facility, the number one goal is world-class destination for our athletes. The number two goal is monetize every inch of that place. That is not the locker room. Of course, that's sacred.
Is there a cap on what you can spend, I guess, outside of it, not on the field? You can so you can spend whatever you want on a stadium, on a training facility. That's up to you, the franchise. You
just have to be able to finance it.
Yeah.
Yes.
But there's no, you have to spend X amount of your, okay. Which is good, because that's where it struggles over here.
Should we do a quick fire round?
Let's do it.
What's the hardest single thing in your job today? Like, number one thing.
Making sure that we're building the right culture in the org. It's what I spend a lot of time thinking about.
Does salary caps not hurt that? Because you can have like player on like $1 million and then like on real low salary.
In some sport teams, there's a culture of like the stars are treated differently. That is 100% against our values. Like every team member of the team is treated the same way.
How does private equity improve sports teams?
Performance orientation, future vision. It's not a vanity project, right? It's business.
What did you do that you would advise a new team to follow your suit on?
Treat it like we're already a global brand from the beginning. Assert yourself out of the gates.
I'm fascinated given the apparel background. What brand do you most respect and admire, and why them?
From a brand perspective, I'd say probably what Nike's done. It's maybe an obvious... working with them is one thing, but just as a consumer, looking at
do you not think they've dropped the ball?
Yeah, I do, 100%. But if you look at, how they transform their business from really a wholesale business to a direct-to-consumer business without taking their eye off the, kind of ethos of who they were, it's really impressive.
What's the key, or would you say the most crucial international market for you to crack?
From a consumer perspective?
Could be. And I guess maybe if you're going international, that's quite an interesting point. Do you think it's more about actually the football than the brand?
That's what I'm thinking through. So it's interesting. We look at where our press comes from globally. And right now we're getting about 25% of our press comes from outside the U.S. I think mainly because we brought players in from outside the U.S. And we're actually building up a pretty substantial fan base in Africa because Rachel is from Zambia and Asisat is from Nigeria. So we've got a huge Nigerian fan base right now, which I would like to continue to cultivate. I mean, my instinct when you ask that question is like, I want the UK because this is the most credible football market, right? If we can get fans here to believe in Bay, then we have that credibility. I think then, hopefully the UK could infect Europe and get Europe for us. And Mexico also is pretty rabid in terms of its support for football, and their fans are very supportive of women's football too. So we played Club America this year, and we had tons of Club America fans in the building, and that was great. But I would just go right here to the UK and hope that you could be our influencer globally.
Does the World Cup sustain US interest in football? He thinks it does, I don't.
I'm open to it.
I would have said yes. However, what we didn't see was a huge bounce coming out of the Olympics or last World Cup. So I don't know. Maybe.
What's your hope for the next 5 to 10 years?
I think my hope is that BayFC has built a stadium and we're playing in our home stadium, and it is a world-class stadium that's not just built for BayFC games, but it also has a residential component, a commercial component, hosts other events, and is becoming a center of culture that helps to establish the Bay identity and reinforce it in the Bay Area community. So I hope that, because that's such a huge infrastructure project and a huge statement, and particularly to build something like that in the Bay Area is a challenge. I hope that the team is known for playing, kind of a unique brand of football in the U.S., much more of a beautiful game, high possession, highly tactical brand of football. And I hope that the company has an incredible culture and is known as an amazing place to work and is a winning culture and just, a happy place to be. So those are my hopes.
This has been so much fun. Thank you so much for making the stop while you've been in London. It's so great to do it in person.
It's so fun. Yeah, I love this.
It's been amazing.
It's a very fancy podcast. Actually in our training facility, we're hoping to build a podcast studio. So
we can come out
great
and we can come out and do the return leg.
Do the return. Come for the opening of the training facility and we can talk about what we've done.
Sponsor the studio. Can it be a 20 VC studio? It's not a bad idea, actually.
100%. Yeah. Yes, you could.
Is it a package with the corner?
You can have 2 special corners a year. We're opening in the end of 2026 training facility. So
okay.
Rock and roll.
All right.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.